At this time, I will call the meeting of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for July 25th, 2018. Would you please join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor,
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahab,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Here.
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Here.
All right, at this time we have 4 members in attendance, and council would like to make a statement at this point.
Good evening. I would like to read from the bylaws of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals so that all of the applicants present in the audience know their ability to go forward tonight or to table the item that they've requested. I'll read now that the quorum under Article 7 states, for the purpose of transacting business at any regular meeting, adjourned, special or called meeting, 4 members shall constitute a quorum, and an affirmative vote of those 4 members shall be required to pass on any matter, except that an affirmative vote of 3 members shall suffice to pass on a motion to deny a request for a variance. The reason that I'm reading that into the record this evening is because this board allows for 5 members to sit up here. And 1 member is currently absent. However, the board may continue and conduct business if at least 4 members are present. If you have 5 members present, then you have 5 voting members who may give you the 4 that you need to give the affirmative vote to pass on any matter that you are required to have those 4 votes. You have only 4 members voting, so you must have all members agreeing to pass any item that they decide to pass a motion on, unless the motion is to deny, in which case you need only 3 members to agree that the item should be denied. At this time, if you choose to delay your application until a time where the board has 5 members present, you may step up to the podium and do so. Otherwise, the board will continue and proceed with the 4 members present and make their determination with those sitting in front of you. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone that wishes to make such a declaration, or should we continue? Yes or no? I'm sorry. You got a yes over here? You got a yes over here? Okay, just making sure. All right, thank you. Ask for approval of the minutes dated March 28, 2018, a long time ago. Anybody remember that meeting? Are there any additions or corrections anyone sees?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion
I make a motion
to accept the minutes?
to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And there's a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And none opposed. Thank you. Okay. I have a little speech to read, so bear with me, please. All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath thereon. These cards are located on a table near the entrance to the chamber, council chamber, and may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the procedures adopted in Resolution number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Then if you have extras, please submit that to the recording secretary at this time. All right, first up, verifying that all people that wish to speak tonight have taken the time to fill out a card and turn it into our secretary. Staff, has all the agenda items been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. And now, are there any members that have visited the site or spoken to the public regarding any item to be reviewed this evening?
No.
Your answer, sir? No. All right. I will say that on item number 2, the owner did say hello to me and say, we're coming before this committee. And then he realized what night it was, and he realized he wasn't going to be in town. And he said, oh, no! He panicked. But that will not make a difference on my decision for tonight. So, we got something else here? All right, we got it there we go. All right, so we have nothing on the consent agenda. We have no old business. So we will move to new business, which the first item on the agenda is appeal number 2000-2018 for 3550 South Washington Avenue. Staff?
The appeal before you tonight is an appeal of a building official's interpretation of code requirements. I'm just going to briefly describe what's in the agenda packet, and then I'll turn it over to maybe a brief statement from the building official, Gary Stepalovich, who's here, and then we'll try and answer any questions you have about this. The recommendation to you is that you accept the building official's interpretation regarding the number of required bathroom fixtures based on the required occupant load specified in the Florida Building Code. Basically, there is an event center that's being proposed for a space at the old Searstown Mall building, and the building official has determined that there is an occupancy load that is higher than what the applicant is hoping to have permitted. In other words, thereby requiring some additional bathroom fixtures according to the building code. The request is to appeal an order by the official regarding the number of those fixtures. The request is for a property located at 3550 South Washington. The Board of Adjustments and Appeals shall have the power to hear and decide appeals of any decision, order, requirement, or an interpretation of an administrative official. The Board of Adjustments and Appeals, when so appealed, may modify or reverse the interpretation of the responsible city official, in this case, the building official. A decision of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals to vary the application of any city ordinance or to modify an order of the responsible city official shall specify in what manner such variation and modification is made, the conditions upon which it is made, and the reason therefore. An alternative to this would be to reject the building official's interpretation, thereby upholding the applicant's appeal. Another alternative would be to accept the appeal, but then apply certain conditions to it. I'm sorry, accept the building official's interpretation and then apply certain conditions. Or, excuse me, accept the appeal, in other words, rejecting the building official's interpretation, and then but accepting the appeal with certain conditions. I promise this will all be a little bit more explained later. On page 9 of the packet, you will see an email that was submitted to the applicant in response to the staff's review of a a building permit that was submitted to us. And under development services, the first statement there is the determination. And it states, the City of Titusville Building Division cannot support the proposed reduction of occupant load for this project. The proposed reduction of occupant load is inconsistent with the spirit of the Florida Building Code. The proposed design indicates the existing plumbing fixture count is driving the proposed reduction of occupant load. It is always the intent of the Florida Building Code for the calculated occupant load to drive the fixture count, and then we were requesting that they provide an accurate proposed occupant load based on the classification and area. With the accurate occupant load, an appropriate proposed plumbing fixture count shall be provided. In addition, the egress plan and exit requirements shall be depicted in compliance with an accurately calculated occupant load. So there are other requirements that would be involved, including the building code and life safety code related to the space and the occupant's load in that room. But what's specifically being appealed here is the code requirement regarding the number of bathroom fixtures or toilets. On page 11 of your packet, you will see the applicant's application for the appeal, and they are specifically requesting, again, a reduction of fixtures based on anticipated occupancy load of the space. So again, specifically to the fixtures. We included in your packet a letter on page 19 from the applicant requesting this appeal. We also included the powers of the Board of Adjustment related to this appeal on page 20. With that, I'll turn it over to Gary Stepalovich, the building official, to see if he has any statement, and then we'll try and answer any questions you have.
Hi, good evening. Brad has pretty much hit the nail on the head with everything that regarding the appeal. One thing I cannot do is I cannot make a judgment call saying, yes, we can reduce the number of bathrooms or reduce the number of toilets or anything else. That's written in the code. It's up to you, the board, to make that decision whether you feel that appropriate to reduce it to the number that they want. But I'm here to answer any questions during the testimony. Thank you.
Okay. Is there questions of the staff? Please.
Just the magnitude of what they are asking for. Could you just shed some light on that? And how many bathrooms are they supposed to have, and what are they asking for, the reduction?
All right. On my handout, there was a chart at the very back end. Right now, they have existing, we'll talk the toilets. They have 2 for female, 2 for male. Pardon me? Okay.
Okay.
Everybody got that page? Yes. Okay. With that, with the calculated occupant count of 560 for that space that they're talking about, they would require double the amount. There were four toilets for male, 4 toilets from female. The lavatories will be sufficient as far as what they have right now. As you can see, they're only required to have 3. They have a service sink, which is correct. The only other thing they would need would be a drinking fountain as one of their fixtures.
In this total building, it seems like it's about 6,500 square feet.
I believe it's around 8,500 square. I believe it's around 8,500 square feet right now.
Okay. And they can have 500 people in there?
When you do the occupant count according to the building code, it comes up to 560. It's based on assemblies with tables and chairs. It's 15 square feet per person.
So is the theory, while it can have 560 people in it, the applicants are saying, yeah, but we're only going to use 300 people at any given time. Is that the theory?
I believe that's their theory. You'll have to ask the applicant if that's their intent. But we're not here talking about the reduction of occupants in there. We're just talking about the reduction on toilet facilities.
And just the calculation for the occupancy, that takes the gross floor area into account, or is it just the open area that they can use?
You're correct on the second statement. It's net area it's based on for occupant count. We do not include bathroom areas, closet areas, any little storage closets, but any of the rooms, the offices, the break areas, and the main floor all count, yes.
Okay. One more question is within Searstown, in the vicinity of this, I don't know too much about Searstown, but is there any bathrooms close by then?
I don't have that answer. Hopefully the applicant will have that answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm trying to understand here. The applicant says they only want to have 300 and something people there. Is that correct?
That's something you'll have to ask the applicant as far as what they're planning on for the number of occupants.
So you're just going strictly by the square footage and saying they can have 560, but they have to have X amount of bathrooms. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's what the code tells me to do.
Thank you. Is there any more questions of staff before we open to the public?
Just one. I'm assuming that based on the size of the building, then that the fire marshal wouldn't get excited about this if there was, like, let's say 500 people. Is the fire marshal going to basically, let's say they exceeded their 300 capacity? I've noticed the fire marshal had weighed in on this as well, so.
That's correct. The fire marshal did weigh in, and he concurs with the occupant count and what we have for life safety requirements in there.
Right, so that's just based on the square footage capacity of the building.
Yes, sir, that's correct, and the NFPA also dictates it the same
And
code.
one last thing, you don't really care where bathrooms are located, you just are worried about count, correct?
We do worry about the location of bathrooms. In a mall situation, when they're available to the public, they are allowed to be up to 500 feet away. But it's my assumption that this is going to be a closed-off area and not have access to the mall. Again, the applicant could speak better for that as far as any other toilets that are within proximity, so
Okay.
they can answer that.
I guess because what I was curious about is, let's say, they were to put 2 additional toilets facilities directly in back of the existing ones. Would that be acceptable?
If it would be acceptable if they had access, if this space had access to the required number of toilets that are here, 4 and 4 of each.
Okay, well, the reason I'm curious about it is because obviously if they're required to have additional toilets and they happen to have to be on the other side of the building, there could be a substantial plumbing cost of demolition of a slab and a number of other issues that could come with that.
Understood, sir. I don't know, I wouldn't know what their intent is to where they would locate them. They have bathrooms, as per the plan, in 2 different locations. So again, that would be their plumber. That would maybe give them a better idea with that.
Just to add on to that, if you look on the survey, it's a large sheet here. It's actually marked here where the location of the bathrooms are currently. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
And I don't know, maybe Gary, you can explain, and they're colored in purple. And those are the existing location, correct, or is that proposed?
That's correct. Those are the existing toilet rooms right
Okay.
now.
And then what is highlighted in yellow is the calculation or area of each of the rooms, am I correct?
That's the occupant count as, that's the square footage per room, and the occupant count is spelled out.
Okay, the occupant count is circled just above each of those square feet areas there, totals. Did you follow that? Okay.
Any other questions of staff? All right, seeing none, then we will open it up to the public at this time. And do we have our first card to speak, please?
Lisa McCotter.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind coming up front, giving your name and your address, please.
My name is Lisa McCotter. Thanks. Lisa McCotter, and I live at 3675 Muirfield Drive in Titusville. I am the general manager of the new Titusville Mall. We've renamed it. The area that we're speaking of, if you're familiar at all, is the, it was originally an Eckerd's drugstore, and before it was a Studio Plus. So that's the area we're speaking of if you're familiar with it. So the problem that we're having is basically we feel like we can't put that many people in this space. We never intended to do that, not only for the space itself, but for our parking. We have a lot of parking, but we have tenants who need parking as well. So we feel like we would be anywhere on a regular basis from 200 to 50 seated to 300 at the top of, standing. That's our intention. So when we got the information of the higher capacity, the problem is that then it makes the project, it's no longer cost effective to add bathrooms, and of course the toilets have to come with sinks. That would be 8 on top of the 6 we already have. That's a hefty price. Things that are understandable are life safety and energy issues that will bring things up to code and add the proper life safety issues that needed to be added. So this would be an additional cost. And the problem with that is it's an additional cost for something we feel like we can't use. And if you will look through the packet I gave you at the, just past the CUP, this drawing, this is an actual layout of the room. We're trying to use it just as it is. So the layout now has, it's a horseshoe-shaped room with 3 additional smaller areas. One, the smaller area we felt could be used for an office for an on-site manager to stay there during events. The smaller room we felt like could be used, we're calling it like a boardroom. Our intention is to put like a boardroom table in and allow it to be used for more meetings, business type meetings, maybe attorneys, deposing people, things like that. And then the larger room would be appropriate for maybe 50 or less, like birthday parties, baby showers, things like that. And then the larger room we anticipate using for our bigger assemblies like weddings. In fact, we see this being used as an event area for weddings and receptions. And the smaller area, not the office, but the smaller area, we felt like would be appropriate for the groomsmen to dress. The larger, not the big room, but the larger of the separate rooms, we felt like would be appropriate for brides to dress, and the females, they are enclosed where they could get to the bathroom without being seen. And then the larger area could be used for the wedding itself and the reception, quick changeover or however they want to do that. So it would never be used for more than one event at a time. And if you flip over to the next page with the table setup, this was drawn by our architect, and it's to scale. These tables and chairs, these are the ones that we actually have on the property. This is all we have. This seats 200. And you can see by the shape of the horseshoe room that it really doesn't accommodate too many more tables than what's on this paper. The dance floor, again, we have it. It's not set up yet, but it's to scale. And because of line of sight, we don't feel like that it could really, no one is going to put people by the doors, and they can't see the center of the room. And if you flip over to the next page, this is actually the room with the tables set up. The bottom right photograph, that shows the opening from inside the room. And I think we've all been to enough events to know that you're not going to put guests inside that room to eat on, table and chairs. They're certainly not going to sit there for a wedding. And the other opening is the same. It's just a regular door opening. We feel even if it were an event, say like a fundraiser, it could be, those extra rooms could be used for maybe something like a buffet setup or maybe a silent auction type table, gift table, something like that. But it would not be used for additional guests because it's not appropriate. Then on the next page is just something that I saw that Gary had in his packet as well. And what I've highlighted is that there is discretion. Should the building chief find it, there could be discretion to lower the number of occupancy. And then on the next page, there's just a little area that talks about fixed seating. We're not fixed seating in that we're a movie theater and the seats are bolted to the floor, but we're fixed in the sense that what's there is there, and that's what, what we feel like that's what we provide, and that's what we feel like is appropriate for the space. So the reason we chose to, we've been in communication often, had many meetings with Gary and the other, building department, and they are not comfortable with lowering the capacity. But it was suggested to us in one of these meetings that we could come here and ask to lower the amount of bathrooms. We are willing to have someone on site during events. We are willing to do anything necessary in writing legally to, know for you all to be comfortable that our intention is never to go above 300, and most likely we would choose to stay at 200. That's the only tables and chairs we're providing, is right at 200. So I think that's it in a nutshell.
Does someone have questions of this witness? So if we were inclined to go with your recommendation, you would put in writing, and it would be posted that X amount of people would occupy the premises.
Absolutely. Yes. If you wanted to, we could go to 200, 250. It would totally max out at 300. And that would be standing. That would not be seated.
Okay, you wouldn't have the tables and chairs for a group that large?
No, they could not fit. You can see the table layout. That's 200. That's seating for 200 of our actual tables that seat 10 people.
Yes.
There's no room for even really 250.
Did not have access, line of sight, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have a question?
What's the operation time?
I'm sorry?
The operating time?
The time? Well, I think the movie theater closes around like midnight, but because there's outside access, they're not quite locked in. We haven't really worked the timing out yet as far as an event. You're talking about an event. Mm-hmm. Just your typical event, 4 or 5 hour event. A wedding could be a little bit different. But, I would say it's possible we could go past midnight, but I'm thinking we're going to cap that because that's when, that's how long our security is there. And that's kind of like what we're set up for now. So that's kind of what we're thinking, is to cap it at midnight.
The other question, one more question for you, and I asked that from staff and they asked to ask you. Where is the closest bathroom to this facility? Outside.
Good question. The closest bathrooms would be like in the movie theater. So there really are not any public mall restrooms, correct?
And have you had a number that corresponds to the number of bathrooms that you have?
That's why we said 300. We're currently 300. The bathrooms we have would be suitable for 300 people.
Suitable for 300?
Yes.
And that is
By
agreeable
code.
to the building department?
Yes, that's my understanding.
300, okay.
That's how we came up with that number.
Okay. But you can't fit more than 200 in the way you have the seating set up?
I really can't see, we're not providing tables and chairs. So, I could see possibly 250 if it was, maybe seated in a different way, like, rows of chairs, but no, I can't see more than that.
And you're saying you're not providing tables and chairs, right?
We are including the tables and chairs in the price of our rental.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the actual size.
Okay.
So in reality then, when 200, 300, 560, at the end of the day, there seems to be 2 bathrooms in the corner of this room that would be for the main room. The other 2 seem to be tucked away in another room, right?
No, well, the one on the, it's actually the south side. It is, or to the left, depending on how you're looking at it, I think that drawing. Yeah, that is, it's just like it's 2 more bathrooms. They are totally accessible to the room. They're kind of like off the dance floor area. And
Are they inside another room?
They
though?
are, sort of, it's kind of like privacy where you open a big door and walk in, like a tiny hallway.
Okay.
Sort of like a tiny hallway.
I gotcha.
As are the other ones. The others have a little hallway with the door that closes. And the ones in the very back would be used for any sort of catering staff. They're, toilet and a urinal. We don't anticipate, well, I mean, you could use it, depends on who's doing the waiting. There might be family doing the catering, like some people do. They don't have formal caterers. Thank you.
Anyone else that has a question of this witness? Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Do we have another card?
Sheila Crone.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Sheila Crone. I live at 237 Bermuda Street in Titusville. I think this would be a good opportunity for our community for growth. This mall has made huge improvements. They have a lot of community-based activities going on right now. And with, the music in the mall, and we have fundraisers, and I think this would really go a long way towards utilizing, something that we already have.
Any questions for this witness? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that wishes to speak?
Jesse Wright.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Wright. I reside in California. Did you want the address, or?
Please.
It's 22939 Hawthorne Boulevard in Torrance, California.
Thank you.
We've been at this thing since February of this year. The mall was purchased in February of this year, February the 10th to be exact. We submitted the conditional use permit on February the 22nd. It was approved on March 27th. I don't know why it was approved. I don't know why we are here today. Nevertheless, the city council meeting that we had was in July 10th. I was here on July 10th, and I withdraw the application from 300 to even 200. I even mentioned to the city attorney that we're willing to give an indemnification letter to the city attorney that if we go past a certain number, come and either handcuff us or simply go ahead and shut us down. Any restaurant facilities, any event center, anywhere in the 50 states in the U.S., including Mississippi, that we've done 44,000 square feet, require a capacity. That capacity should be on the wall, mounted, and so everyone would know what that capacity is. We did not ask for 560. And we can be forced to have 560. I am extremely surprised by the fire department agreeing to having that many people. For 560, obviously, you have to have more bathrooms. We have not 4, but we have 5 bathrooms. There is a bathroom in the back. The total square footage is about 10,000 square feet. 2,000 square feet is in the back portion where we store tables and chairs and warmer and the ice machine. And there's also another bathroom, and there's also another exit. So we have about 8,000 square feet. And for that reason, I'm just not sure why we're having this stumbling block from the city. We have operated in state of Mississippi, in Tennessee. What you're looking at there is a picture of about 44,000 square feet that has 7 function rooms, and each function room has about 400 capacity. We have up to about 2,800 capacity in that 44,000 square feet. We've had this now since 2013. That's in Jackson, Mississippi, and the address is 2460 Terry Road in Jackson, Mississippi, for the records. So we've done this in Jackson. We've done this in Crossville, Tennessee. We have a full staff by taking an application, making sure who the applicants are, how many people are going to go there. This isn't something where we just put in 200 people, lock the door, and just collect the money. That's not the way it works. Very, very professional in terms of number of people going in there. We monitor the weddings and functions and so on and so forth. We're not planning on cheating, and we would be expected to be shut down by the building department or the fire department. But we have to be given the same respect as any other restaurants, any other facilities, anywhere in this city or any other cities, anywhere in the U.S. Talking about life safety, our architect has provided life safety with mechanical. We have a 30-ton air conditioning unit in this space. That covers 1 ton for every 400 square feet. I totally reject the idea of 1 person per 15 square feet, what building department is mentioning right now. If you just imagine 1 person per 15 square feet, there is no room to wiggle to go from one table to another. It just doesn't make sense. As you know, Sears has closed down on July 7th. In that 90,000 square feet, we have total of at least a good 8 to 10 bathrooms there. It is closed now, but it will be open. I'm working on national tenant to go in there. We may either have to split it up into multiple spaces, or we may have to work with the county, Brevard County, to be able to put an indoor sports center there. But they will have bathrooms. And we're not going to let the people that are going into the event center just to kind of use the facilities there. They can go to the cinema. They can go to the Sears. So with that said, besides the event center in this mall, as you know, the Miracle Mall was developed to be the Titus Landing with a budget of some 65, 70 million, is the same replica mall as this one. This mall is 290,000 square feet, sitting on 22 acres on US 1. I'm a very hands-on CEO. I am planning on putting national tenant into Sears, and I'm planning to bring traffic into the mall. And I'd like the building department, the fire department, and everyone in the city to know that we would like to cooperate with you to be able to accomplish that. This matter has taken 5 months. The next thing is going to be the independent auto center that we're planning on opening up. That would be catering to people in the area. The next thing is going to be a discussion about which national tenant is going to be taking spaces. If this has taken 5 months and we're still at it, I wonder how many years we have to wait. And I'm joking. How many years it's going to take for us to finish 90,000 square feet? We've never had any issues in city of Crossville with the mayor's department, the county of Cumberland in Tennessee, or in Jackson, Mississippi. Full cooperation. We've never really gone as far as what we've gone. And I'm just surprised to even be here. It's perfect to be here and meet you guys, but I'm just frustrated, and I apologize for my frustration if I'm coming out, and I don't want to be offensive in any way to Gary or anyone else, but this is only 10,000 from 290,000 square feet. I still got another 90,000 to go. And I still have 5, 6 other vacancies at about 4,500 to 5,000 square feet that we're trying to fill. And I really appreciate your help. That's all I have to say. Be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from this witness? Yes, sir.
I just have one question. You know, I just want to let you know that the building department follow code, okay? They're not making this up just to give you a hard time or anything. It's to just follow code. And for them not to follow code, sometimes they have to come to the Board of Adjustment. You have to come to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals and ask for something like this. This is the first time we ever had something like this come up to the board. Usually we deal with site issues, site setbacks, site encroachment, and things like that. Now with bathrooms, this is the first time I've heard about this coming to us, okay? Now, there must be somehow that the building department try to work with you. They try to work with you, and the only way they can get it approved is they can't say the code, you know, we're gonna cross the code and then go for it. They have to come to a certain agreement or certain way of explaining why did they go against the building code. So in favor of the building department, you know, they are doing what the code says, and we can't veer from that. But on the other hand, I feel with you too, because this is a building that we wanted occupied. I live in the city of Titusville. I've been in here for 25, 30 years. So would like to see that space occupied too. Now, is there something that other than just putting some kind of a plaque at the front of the building saying no more than 250 or 300 people allowed in this building?
We can put it in any entrance. We can have 50 of them put in anywhere, so then you know, everybody knows it's 250.
We don't want 50. We just need enough, you know, to have the police department. Sometimes they come in or the fire department, they come in and check that.
Sid, so, I want to respond to what your comment was just now. I would love for Gary and Steve Adam and Mark from the fire department to just give us 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the site, because after this department, then we have to go to fire department. I don't know if we're going to be here again for that. And so for that reason, if there was a way, and it's just a suggestion for the building department and the city hall, if they can meet on larger projects like this on the site, that would have the planning, possibly building, and also fire, to sit for 10 minutes and discuss it. I thought we had that done. I didn't know that Steve Adam at the time had a boss named Gary when we met with Steve on site. And we met and we discussed it, and I thought it went away. But I was under the wrong impression, obviously. So I'm willing to work anything out, but
we understand.
But we don't want to go then go to the fire department, so we got to take all these windows out and put another sprinkler system all together. And this space is the end cap near the cinema and near where whoever the tenants are going to be in Sears. And it's a perfect, you know, space for that. This town needs an event center. It needs a place for people to get married. It needs a place for functions, and you just don't have that. So am I going to get your cooperation and building department cooperation or no? And if not, we'll just send everything back to another shopping center we have. I kid you not, these pictures were taken from 7 different function rooms, and we've never had any issues with the city, ever.
Just to interrupt you a little bit, you know, the city we never had any issues. I'm a civil engineer inside the city of Titusville. I have a small civil engineering firm.
And I'm a mechanical engineer myself.
No. What I'm telling you is like every time we have a project or something like that, we have meetings with the city, and they're always on time. There's like within a week, we have a meeting with all the staff, and they always put us up front, and they actually give us comments about every single little thing that we are doing. So to say that you can't meet with them or you haven't met with them, it's the process you went through. And that's my feeling right now is like there is a process you have to go through, and then they give you comments, you respond to the comments, and if you are not satisfied, there's ways to go around it and to go ask for, waivers or ask for variance, and that's the process you have to go through. You can't, and I'm not sure why you've been working for 5 months on this.
I don't know why we're in here.
Okay.
City council meeting, I mean, the CUP was approved, date approved March 27. Why was it approved? Disapprove it.
Sir, while I love your threat to take your toys to another sandbox, let me just ask you a few basic questions here. On the conditional use permit, it indicates that the proposed maximum capacity of the facility as proposed by the application is 299 persons seated configuration and 399 persons in a standing configuration. So at the time of the conditional use permit, was that your proposal for those numbers that have now been downsized due to the desire to not have to put in bathrooms?
Well, in
that
the
the bottom
city,
line?
in the city council meeting, I withdrew our request for 300 people to 200 people. That's the first thing, and I'm on record on that.
Yeah, I'm reading 299 persons in a seated configuration and 399 persons in a standing configuration.
And we have plenty of bathroom for the 300 people.
Okay, so that's fine. Have you all looked into the cost of adding the additional bathrooms as required by the code and suggested by the city?
And it is not cost effective, no.
So the answer is yes, you've looked into it?
I have looked into it, yes.
Okay. I have questions.
And I'm sorry, it was not a threat.
It was tables and chairs. You were going to move.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of this witness? Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. Do we have any other cards to speak?
No, sir.
Very well. Then at this time, we'll close the public comments from the public at this time
Chairman.
and bring it back to staff for questions.
Okay.
And we have questions for staff, and then staff can elaborate.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if this public hearing needed to still be open for staff to answer questions or not.
Unless
Okay.
you have questions of a witness.
No, sir.
Okay, then, okay, we've closed the public discussion. Staff, you have some additional comments?
I do. I just want to respond to some of the comments that were made and kind of provide some explanation. But if you have some questions, I'll try and
I
answer.
just have one question I would really love to have answered. Ms. McCotter made a good point regarding the exception in the occupant load section 1004.1.2 areas without fixed seating. Can staff just address the applicability of that exception to what we're talking about here?
The building code, or the building official and the fire marshal determined that for an assembly occupancy, we are not going to waiver on the reduction of an occupant count. We can do that. There are times that we've done that, where we have a large storage building. Give you an example, Blue Origin. And when that factory area, they're going to have 350 people. But it's actually, you could, if you did the calculations, 3,500 people. We have business offices sometimes where they just have large office areas and they only have 200 people, and they might be designed for, have a size for 500 people. But those are places where we don't have to worry about darkness inside, reduced lighting. We don't have to worry about alcohol. We don't have to worry about a lot of other things that are happening inside these places. We don't know what's going on in assembly areas. And that's why the fire marshal and I are just not acceptable to reducing an assembly area.
It's due to the inability to monitor whether it's 250 or 300 people.
That is correct. And we couldn't do it. How, it's like, are we going to go down there every event and count the people while they're there? No. What's going to happen when they have events like, okay, they may have a wedding today, but they might have a coin show or a gun show tomorrow or the next day where you see lots more people in there. I don't know what that's going to happen through there. So that's why we just left it at, full life safety for the 560 that the building size shows.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to state for clarification that, yes, there was a CUP that was a conditional use permit that was approved a few months ago, but that was in response primarily because in the zoning district, an assembly use at this type is required to have that special permit. We did not propose any special conditions as part of that permit, so it was just approved as proposed and as submitted. And then the building permit obviously would need to have been submitted and applied for and issued based on, any conditions that might have been approved as part of that conditional use, which in this case did not have any conditions. Just so you know, though, this all started several months ago because there was activity going on at this site that without a permit. And so we were made aware of that, and so we informed the property owners that a permit was needed to do some work inside that site, the space that's being proposed here tonight. So then we informed them about the CUP. They went through the public hearing process, got that approved, and then they submitted a building permit. And that's where we stand right now, is the building permit. And there was, of course, the response that we got back from Steve Adams, which I read in the record to you. Just so you know that the occupant load is not, that's an arbitrary number that the applicant is proposing. We can't enforce that. The occupant load is based on what the Florida Building Code says and what the building official and the fire marshal have determined based on the size and square foot of that space. And right now, my understanding is in the handout you see here on that section 1004, there is a occupant load based on one person per 15 square feet of unseated, unconcentrated tables and chairs. And then on the next page, the building official has given you the requirements for the number of fixtures based on that occupant load under Chapter 29 plumbing systems of the Florida Building Code. And so if the applicant wants to have a maximum occupant load that they want to set for their space, they can certainly do that, but the city is not going to enforce that. We're going to determine, the building official is determining the occupant load based on what the Florida Building Code and what the space allows, can basically allow a number of people in there. So another thing that you should consider as well is if you do reduce or accept the appeal and allow them to have a fewer number of bathroom fixtures, that you should be aware that the occupant load will not change as far as the analysis by the building official and the fire marshal, because they will have to look at and consider other requirements that the building code and the life safety code would require based on that occupant load. So that doesn't change. Again, there was a building permit that was required. They were doing work without a permit at one point. They went through a conditional use permit, and then right now we're just at a standstill with a building permit that's being issued, was applied for and has not been issued yet. So that's where we stand with this, and I'll try and answer any questions you have.
So you're saying that if we were to do this for this part, the fire department could come back and say no, and they would have to come through this appeal process again?
If you approve this tonight as is proposed, it would be only related to the bathroom fixtures. There are other requirements that are not being addressed here tonight, that are being addressed by the building official and the fire marshal, that are will be required based on what they see as the occupant load. So
Back up to that 600 number almost.
that 560.
I think,
And that includes ADA requirements, that includes access, ingress, egress, things of that nature.
Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify, I think what I hear staff saying is just that the motion should be specific only to the bathrooms. If that was granted by this board, is that this appeal should be very specifically delineated to the request as it relates to the bathroom fixtures, and the occupant load would remain at 560 for all other purposes.
For sake of simplicity, is there other, can you list the other items that they are supposed to comply with other than the bathrooms for this occupancy?
If you look at my handout, it would be the second page of my handout right behind the building permit. You'll see a section where the email went out under, it says development services. You'll see the first one was, for item number 1 was the requirement for the toilet facilities. And then you'll see 2, 3, 4, and 5 that will still need to be addressed as part of this permit approval.
All right, it's Greek to me. Can you explain what energy
Right.
Florida Energy Conservation Code's about.
Right. What happens what's with that? Whenever you go through a change of occupancy, what this building's going through right now, it was retail before, now it's going to an assembly occupancy. The Florida Building Code basically says, now you've got to comply with the new codes. We're going through a change, you've got to comply with the new codes. And that would, for accessibility for energy codes, it could be the air conditioning, it could mean the SEER rating of an air conditioner, it could mean the insulation value of walls and doors. Mechanical, it could mean the airflow rate coming inside of a building. There's a lot of different things that come into play. The existing building code, which is part of the Florida Building Code, does give you a lot of relief on it, but there's still a lot of items as far as health and safety that need to comply.
Well, it's just feeling to me like this is almost a little premature. I mean, it seems like there's still a number of other issues that the applicant's going to have to face across, and we may be back onesie and twosie listening to these other things. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
The applicant could certainly appeal and submit an application for variance for any number of things that are in the code, Florida Building Code or Life Safety Code. So it's possible. As far as I understand, the letter that was read to you in the record, the email here that was given to the applicant, we have not received a response or revisions of the permit, my understanding.
That's correct.
So, no, those
That's
other
correct.
comments have not been addressed.
I'm gonna ask an offensive question. What does the city care of whether there are only 2 female bathrooms to 100 people or 500 people, or 2 male bathrooms? What does it affect the city? I mean, it affects me if I'm a lady at an event and I have to stand in line for an hour. That irritates me. But what does it affect the city?
The number of bathrooms doesn't affect the city as far as I don't consider it a health, safety, or any other issue other than an inconvenience. Like you say, you might be standing in line for 20, 30 minutes. You might be going outside. We don't know what you're going to be doing, but then the reason the code has it is so that you
Right.
have a comfort level there.
Is there any way outside of building a brand-new building you will ever meet all these codes for a remodeled building?
Yes, sir. It happens frequently, 99% of the time. We have a lot of remodels going on in the city. And if you think about how many times I've been in front of you, I think this is my first time. We go through a lot of renovations, a lot of alterations, a lot of change of occupancies, a lot of things happen, and like 99% comply.
May I just, you didn't
Just-
ask a question, but.
Just a moment, I'm sorry, we're not open unless somebody wants to allow you to speak back again. Is there more questions of staff?
We know that we have 5 bathrooms now, and then that corresponds to a certain number of occupancy. And then that would go up to the number of square footage of the building that is calculated for occupancy. Do we have that number anywhere, or?
The number for 5 bathrooms?
No, if we had 300, all right, say we reduce this just to 300 people. Right now, you say you almost have 600. So we cut the room in half. Would this meet the requirements if the room was cut in half
Yes, it would.
for 600, almost 600 people? And they're, okay.
And the other part too is you're counting all the rooms because it's written by the code to count all the rooms, not to just the assembly area.
That is correct. We have to count the offices, the staging areas, the storage areas. There is an occupant count for everything as per the code. That's correct.
And just the assembly area is about 6,800, and the other areas are the balance that comes up with the numbers.
I'm probably actually seeing more like 7,000, almost 8,000 square feet of assembly area.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to hear what Ms. McCotter has to say.
Very good. Is there consensus among the board to do that?
Yes?
All right. Then we'll reopen the public discussion again. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson, it's actually kind of a answer to your, wasn't really a question, but a statement. We realize the other requirements, and we don't have a problem with that. We have already priced out for instance, life safety. We know that we have to have the fire system has to have a voice that tells you, it's time to leave, that sort of thing. And then we're aware as well of bringing things up to code, like the HVAC system. We realize there may be some additional insulation needed, changing the lights to LED, being just efficient. So we have calculated those costs in, and once we calculated those, because it's expensive, just like that alarm system, it's about $20,000. So it was the number of bathrooms to be added that pushed it over the edge, that many fixtures, the plumbing going into the concrete, hooking into, the whole thing. That was what would make it so that it's no longer cost effective. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that does answer some of the other questions about the other items. Okay. All right. Any more questions of staff or anybody? No, we'll close the public hearing again. So I guess we'll bring. Oh, yes.
I think a follow-up to one of the questions you already asked. I think what the chairman asked was if the room was cut in half, would it all be in compliance? But if we look at the 439 that is marked above new meeting room A, the largest space, then if I did my math right, it sounds like it would need 5 bathrooms, which do exist, although there's really only 4 for public access, right? So if only the main space of the meeting room was existed, then those 5 bathrooms are in compliance.
Yes, to a point, the 5th bathroom not being compliant as far as accessibility.
Public use, okay, right.
Can you explain what you mean by accessibility there?
Handicap compliant, wheelchair accessible.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other discussion, or?
Just one, all the other bathrooms are handicap accessible?
From the appearance of them, yes, they all appear to have the proper dimensions and the turn radius available in there. Not sure if they have all the proper grab bars and all the fixtures, but that's a minor issue to be concerned with.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick question. I'm assuming these are fixed walls that you're depicting here, not movable partitions, right? Okay. Thank you.
All right. What is the pleasure of the board? Or is there a pleasure?
I want discussion before motion.
You want to discuss before the motion? All right, well. All right, what would you have to say? Or request?
Well, you know me and my rules. I love the code. But when I look at, I don't care 560, 300, none of that makes a difference. If the practicality of this provision is the convenience of the people in the room, then I don't think there's a significant harm in giving the applicant what they're asking for. I mean, I personally would be annoyed under the circumstances, but looking at the practicality of the situation, the meeting room itself is almost in compliance when that's the only thing being utilized, even if it is utilized at 439 people in that room. I do agree with, you know, the city that no one's gonna go out there and count and that they shouldn't be taking advantage because of that. But the majority of the meeting space is almost in compliance. On the other hand, the code's very clear.
Any other discussion or comments? Okay.
Yeah, one more. But when staff is saying that also, you know, it might not be a wedding, it might be a gun show, a stamp collection show where the tables are set up in rows and significantly more people are in that space, then we're back to the convenience factor being even more inconvenient. And if all these other adjustments have to be made to the building and the cost, I don't necessarily believe that the cost of putting in more bathrooms is what the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, there's a totality of the circumstances, certainly. Okay, that's all I have to say.
For discussion, just a thought, because this is based on 15 square feet per occupant. You know, 15 square feet is just like a 4x4. If you know, one person really, that's a very tight area for one person to stand. I think, you know, you feel like you're clustered into an area where this doesn't happen. So on one hand, I mean, we are pushing the envelope here to the max, and I don't think you know, you're going to have 500 people in a room like this. I don't know. This is the first time we ever had something like this.
Yes, sir?
I'm kind of inclined to agree with that on the number of, but mainly because the room is partitioned in the manner it is. If it were just one large room and there were no partitions in it and no walls, then I think this would be much more clear-cut, and I think the city's opinion would most certainly prevail in that case. But in this particular instance, probably a third of the space is, and if you factor out the square footage of the bathrooms, probably a third of this whole total square footage is no one is going to be occupying at the same time. So in other words, if you're using the large room, let's say the worst case situation, there's some music event, and there's people on the dance floor, and they are occupying only four square feet. Still, this total square foot that they could be in is still only probably not even 2/3 of the total square feet in the room. At least that's the way I'm seeing this anyway. So for that reason, I'm kind of inclined to think that the existing facilities are sufficient.
Okay. All right. Can we have a motion that we go forth on it? I can't make it.
I know you can't. Go ahead.
How you gonna word it? Right.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this variance. Get the number here.
No, it's an appeal.
Oh, an appeal, excuse me.
Yeah, this number.
That's what I was looking for, the number.
No, that's
CUP.
That's the conventional use. All right, let me go back to page 1.
We'll find the number in a minute.
Appeal number 2-2018.
This is the beginning of page 7 of your packet.
All right, there's 2-2017.
Okay,
18, yes.
yes. Okay, the appeal is number 2-2018. The address is 3550 South Washington Avenue. So I make a motion to approve that appeal.
May I interrupt, Chair, to just say that if the board is inclined to move with this motion, that the motion be clarified to condition that the approval is limited only to appeal the number of bathroom fixtures required for this specified use of this property?
Yes, that's a good annotation. Thank
All
you.
right, we had a motion. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahayan,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes,
Member Smith Rodriguez.
Yes.
Very good. So this is passed for the number of toilets or restrooms only. All right? Success. All right.
Mr. Wright, I would encourage you to have a little bit more of a positive tone when communicating with our staff, because we are a growing city and we're happy to have businesses like yours and companies and CEOs like you, but we all like to play nice together. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Moving on now. Next up is, you're welcome. Next up is variance 5-2018 concerning the property at 1605 and 1625 White Drive. Staff, would you please enlighten us?
The agenda items on page 21 of your packet. Again, this is variance number 5 of this year, 2018, and this is for property located at 1605 and 1625 White Drive. The property is located in the Planned Industrial Zoning District, Planned Industrial Development Zoning District. The applicant is Robert Jordan. The staff report starts on page 23 of your packet. I'm sorry, this variance is specific to property located at 1605, but it is kind of related to the adjacent address, 1625, because what the applicant is going to propose to do is take a chunk of land from one property and add it to another in order to allow for a detached accessory garage. So the variance request is to specifically to section 28-320C, intensity and dimensional standards of the PID, to allow less than the 50-foot minimum rear yard setback and the 35-foot minimum interior side yard setback required for a property in the Planned Industrial Development Zoning District. So again, this variance is specifically for 1605 White Drive. The future land use is Planned Industrial Park. Again, the zoning is PID. The surrounding properties are also PID. I'll just describe the lot characteristics a little bit. The lot conforms to the minimum standards of the PID zoning district. The lot is rectangular in shape with a 150 feet of frontage on White Drive and 300 feet deep for approximately 45,000 square feet of area. The applicant is proposing to add approximately 2,700 plus square feet of land from 1625 to this property at 1605. On page 24 of your packet describes the board's powers, and I'll just briefly describe those for the record. Some of the criteria that you have to consider is whether there's special conditions or circumstances that are peculiar to this property. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested would not confer any special privilege to the applicant or to the property. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others. The variance granted, and this is the minimum, and this is the criteria we looked at the most here, and I'll describe why. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance. In granting the variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured, and the use is consistent with the zoning district. On that same page, on page 24, you'll see a clip that I added into the staff report under the title analysis, and that is a clip of the plat that was approved in 1972. And you can see lot 7 there. Hopefully you can see that. That's the property is located on that lot. So it's not the entire lot, it's just a portion of that lot. Later on, this lot was divided up into 3 different parcels. On page 25 of the packet, under the title zoning districts. I described that between 1971 and 1993, there was a zoning district called M3 on the property, which had a different setback requirement of 25 feet in the rear for principal buildings and 25 feet on the side for principal buildings. You can see in Figure 2, the current PID zoning is, the current zoning on the property rather is PID, and you can see somewhat how the property is split now. In the aerial in Figure 3, you'll see that same original Lot 7, and you'll see 3 buildings on that aerial. There are 3 lots or lot boundaries rather, that split up that lot now for each of those buildings. As far as we could tell, the building, based on the survey of both 1605 and 1625, the buildings meet the original setback requirements of the M3 when they were originally constructed in 1974, 83, and 85. The PID zoning was put onto this property and this whole area in 1993 with a new setback of 50 feet in the rear and 35 feet in the side. The applicant is the owner of the property at 1605 White Drive and the adjacent property at 1625. So he owns 1605, the property where the variance is going to be, and he also bought the one just next to it. The purpose of the variance is to request is to erect a storage building on the property line between 1605 and 1625. In Figure 4, and I know it's kind of confusing, I tried to draw the boundaries in color, kind of distinguish the differences here. You'll see in that figure called storage building and proposed property boundaries, in green, that's the property boundary of 1605. In blue, you'll see it titled existing building. And then in red, you'll see the proposed new property boundary. That's the chunk of area of land that's going to be transferred from 1625 to 1605. I hope that's clear. And then the garage will straddle the old property boundary. That's what the applicant is proposing. The applicant has suggested, I tried to see if we could work with the applicant to see maybe they can move this garage further away from the rear property line to maybe maintain that 50 feet. He told me during a site visit that it would defeat the purpose of the garage because at the back of the existing building on 1605, there is a backdoor garage where a lot of supplies are brought in or out. And so as a truck is coming out, it would need to be able to easily access this detached garage. So he's just running out of space for storage. He's looking for a place to put it. He's limited in where he can do it, and he wants to be able to access it properly with a large truck. On page 26 of the packet, I further went into some description about the fact that there is about the applicant where he's proposing to put the garage will encroach into the 50-foot rear setback of the PID. And that new boundary that goes, that he's going to create that goes somewhat maybe 40 degrees in an angle up, we consider that to be a side yard setback, a side yard property boundary. So we'd measure his side yard then from that point, and we believe he's encroaching into that. So the only rear line, property line that we see is the existing back line of his property at 1605. And everything else is a side. That's how we've interpreted it. If you disagree with that, we'll certainly try and help you understand, or if you want to take a different call on how that's supposed to be interpreted, we can certainly discuss that. We did suggest to the applicant, I know in Figure 5, this is a possible layout. I know it's a little confusing, but what we tried to suggest to the applicant was if he's going to propose these new property boundaries, try and make them as big as possible in order to create a bigger setback, side yard setback, between the new garage and the new property boundary, up to the maximum whereby he's not creating a new conformity on the other lot. So he maintains the rear setback on the lot where he's transferring property from. So he's maintaining the rear setback of 50 feet behind the existing building to the new property line. But he's just bringing his property boundary up to that maximum. I hope that's clear. I could certainly come up to the dais and explain what I'm talking about. So our recommendation is this, that the variance request to encroach into the existing rear yard and side yard setbacks be approved on condition that the new boundaries that the applicant is proposing to create, north and west of the storage building, of the garage, be relocated to its maximum potential, to maintain at the minimum a 50 feet setback for the building at 1625 White in the rear there. We believe that the variance with the recommended condition, as I proposed here, is the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of the land. The location of the storage building in the rear setback will allow truck delivery access. The variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance. Approval of the variance with the recommended condition will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege denied to others in the PID zoning district. A significant setback will be maintained around the building, consistent with the original development. The rear setback would be consistent with the original development. However, if the variance is approved without this recommended condition, we believe that this will confer upon the applicant a privilege that would be denied by others in the same zoning. The layout of the new building's boundaries, as he's currently proposing, would create a circumstance resulting from the applicant's actions. The variance without the recommended condition would not be the minimum necessary that we believe to make possible reasonable use of the land. On the next page, on page 27 of your packet, is the zoning map again. The application starts on page 28, and he's provided a narrative at the bottom of page 28. On the page 31 of your packet, the applicant also provided additional explanation for the purpose of the variances. An aerial is provided on page 33 of your packet by the applicant, and it kind of shows the location of the proposed garage. Page 34 of your packet is the property boundary survey for 1605 White Drive with the proposed location of the garage. Page 35 is the boundary survey of the adjacent property he just recently bought at 1625 White Drive. Page 37 of the packet, again, is that survey of 1605 White Drive with the new boundary being added to it, new area of land being added to it at the bottom there. I'm sorry, page 37 of the packet. If I'm going too fast, please tell me to stop. Okay.
37.
Yes, sir.
Proposed by you, by staff.
This is proposed by the applicant. Yes, these boundaries you see here on page 37 is being proposed by the applicant. We are suggesting to the applicant that he can move those boundaries out even further to create a bigger setback.
How does the yellow line on page 37 compare to staff's recommended condition?
We believe that it is too close to the garage. We believe he has room to move that line, for example, on the north side of the garage that he's proposing, further north, all the way to the 50 feet at least from the rear of the building at 1625 Drive, White Drive. Did you follow that?
So what's the bottom line? How much more does he need to take from 1625 to maximize the least amount of encroachment?
That I've not been able to get from the applicant. When I suggested that to him, I thought that he could move these boundaries out further, but the furthest I was suggesting to him was to bring that north boundary there of the new area he's trying to add on to here, to this property, further north to the point where it doesn't encroach into the 50-foot rear setback of the building at 1625 White Drive. 1625 White Drive, again, is on the left side of the screen, and 1605 is on the right side of the screen.
Yeah, but if you do that, it won't line up with the back of the other building, is that correct?
It will. What I'm saying is that north boundary line will line up with it. I'm going to show you real quick. Right here.
Now, you're on page 37.
37.
All right.
So
We don't have yellow lines on ours, so that's why
This is
we're.
really faint.
this line right here, this line right here at the top, I would suggest to him that he move it further north, up to at least 50 feet away from the building that's on that property. So you would move this line further north up. And I thought he could do that and still have a significant setback between the new garage.
But that takes away from that property too.
It does, but it doesn't make it non-conforming. And then he moves this line out to here to maintain a side yard setback over here. And when we calculated that out, it doesn't create a non-conformity on the other lot.
But you don't know how much it needs to be moved north or moved
I don't know from
northwest.
the distance of the proposed garage, no, but I do know that he can bring it to the very maximum.
Yeah.
And he would still have an encroachment
Yeah.
into the side yard setback up here,
Okay.
but not as much as he's proposing. So that's what I was trying to suggest to the other. I hope that was clear.
Yeah.
All right. The PID zoning standards are on page 38 of your packet. You'll see the minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet. Minimum width of a lot is 150 feet. On page 39, further down, the same standards. A building must maintain a 50-foot front setback, a 50-foot rear setback, and a 35-foot interior side setback. So you see that standard on page 39.
All right, now this is the new standard. This is not
Correct.
the standard that the subdivision was originally built on.
Correct.
When did this standard change?
1993. The entire subdivision was rezoned.
But
93.
when was it originally plotted under this
19. It was platted in 1972.
72?
And that M3, that old original zoning district, was on that property between 1971 and 1993.
So when it was re-given a new name, the old conditions just go away, and now everything has to go to the new one?
The way zoning works is when you rezone the property with new standards, there is a potential of creating nonconformities as a result, yes. And I think in this case, that's probably what happened on some properties here. But in order to develop or redevelop, they would have to meet those new standards. So they expand the building or redevelop or put a new building there, it would have to meet those new standards, not the old standards. They're no longer valid.
So if we hadn't changed the standards, this would have met the original, whatever standards.
Potentially, yeah. Or the variance would have been much less. On page 41 of your packet, you'll see another aerial. It's just another perspective of the building at 1625 White Drive. And you can kind of see the back area there where he wants to put the garage.
There was some mention about losing pine trees or trees if he had to move it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the other reason he didn't want to keep with the garage where he's proposing it, as opposed to moving it further north. He did not want to relocate the garage because he might have to take out a tree. I'm not proposing he's moved the garage. I'm only proposing that he relocate or expand the boundaries out a little more.
Okay.
There are additional photographs that I took when I visited the site, starting on page 42. It's from the street. Page 43 is the building at 1625 White Drive.
Yes.
Page 44 is the rear of 16, yeah, that's the rear of the buildings. 45 is a completely different building, that's just looking off the site.
So 44, where that motorhome is, that's kind of where he's proposing to put the building?
Where the motorhome, no, the building, yeah, would be located right there on page 44, on that aerial, right in front of those trees there. And that motorhome there is located behind the building at 1625.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. I'm turned. Okay. Looking north. Okay.
Page 45 is me turning completely 180 degrees. I'm looking south.
Yeah. The other property.
Right. Again, page 46, same thing. I'm looking south. And you can see how there's a sidewalk going underneath fence there, a chain link fence. These three buildings used to be all one unified lot at one point.
Right.
Page 47 is the driveway between both 1625 and 1605.
Okay.
And where that pine tree is, or that palm tree is, you can see the trunk.
Yes.
Right before that's where he wants to put his garage.
Kind of where and the pavement where the ripple line is
Correct.
there?
Correct.
And that lines up with the back of the other building?
Correct.
The main building.
That's the end of the agenda item. I'll try and answer any more questions you have. I hope I was clear. I know this one was a little confusing. But basically, I'm asking if you would consider we agree with the variance request for the garage to be encroaching into the rear yard setback and the existing side yard setback. But we would just ask that the area that he's adding on to 1605 just be increased in size, in order, thereby creating a bigger setback around the garage.
So we will still have encroachment on the south side
Yes,
and that quote-on side yard, but you're expanding the area so it's not encroaching on the other
it
area.
will still have some of encroachment, but it won't be as significant, as small as you see it, as he's proposing right now.
Okay.
So, you could reject my recommendation and just approve his variance as proposed, or you could accept my recommendation.
All right. Any other questions of staff? All right. Then in that case, we'll open it up to the public. May we have the first card, please?
Robert Jordan III.
Welcome, sir. If you would give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Robert Lee Jordan III. I'm actually here just representing my dad in this matter. Actually didn't know that you were going to do such a good job of explaining what we were trying to do. But I'm here just to let you know that my dad is in agreement with what you have proposed this evening. And we just really appreciate your consideration in doing this.
Okay, so the owner is in agreement with the staff of increasing that other boundaries
That's correct.
as staff recommended.
Yes.
All right. Is there any questions to that? That sounds good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Are there any other cards?
No, sir.
Then we will close the discussion, or the public hearing part. Any more questions of staff?
Just one question. How are we gonna have that line defined?
If you take a look at page 26 of your packet, and zoom in on figure 5.
Let's see, 26, you said?
Page 26 of your packet, it's part of the staff report. It's on the recommendation page. And there's a figure there called figure 5, possible layout.
Figure 1, let's see. 26, right?
Yes, sir.
It's figure 5, okay?
Okay. So we suggested, I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay. We suggested in this possible layout, figure 5 on page 26, that he move, if you can see here, you'll see, move the garage further north, maintaining that rear yard setback at 50 feet. Well, he's not wanting to do that. He wants to keep it where it is, so to encroach in that rear yard setback. But by moving that garage further south and then having that, agreeing to the new boundary there that's colored in red, you can see that new boundary on the north side, for example, is just at 50 feet from the rear of that building at 1625.
Okay.
So moving the garage further south, there will be some encroachment on the north side of it and possibly on the west side of it, but not as much as was originally proposed. So that's what we were trying to get at. The exact dimensions, if your motion is to approve it and to allow staff to make sure he works within that condition or that approval, we can do that. But basically, your variance would be to allow them to encroach into those side yard setbacks.
Okay. But you're shifting the building too to the south?
Yeah, what you see in that figure there is what we proposed, and he said he could not work with that, so he wants to keep the building further south, encroaching into that rear yard setback. So,
The building itself, it's, part of the building is there, right?
I'm sorry, are you talking about the building or the garage?
The garage.
The garage, yeah, he would move that further south. He would,
That's staff's proposal, not the applicant's.
yeah.
Okay.
He's agreeing with our dimensions that we proposed in here as far as the area, the new property boundaries, but he disagreed with our proposed location of the garage in this layout.
In this layout.
Yes.
So he's, so we can't say the layout is the way to go then?
As far as the property boundaries, yes.
Yeah, as far as property boundary?
Property boundaries, yes.
So what would be the motion?
So if you could approve a motion that he receive the variance as requested, provided that he moves the boundaries to the fullest potential up to 50 feet from the rear of the building line or setback at 1625 White Drive. I can come up again and show this and point at this layout again if you like.
I think we see it now.
Okay.
So on the south side, there's no 50 feet setback. On the south side would be,
Side yard.
the south side, the 50 foot is not there then.
Do you know what setback is proposed by the applicant on the southern boundary of the garage?
The southern boundary, you mean?
Between the southern end of the property and the southern end of the garage, what is that distance?
Well, you're saying 50.
The back one.
This one is 50.
Oh, no, he's saying 50 from up here, though.
He's proposing 36 feet
36 feet.
of a rear setback as opposed to 50 feet.
Okay.
Well, why don't, if I'm seeing this right, is if we approve the variance with the exception of the north property line being more than 50 feet, actually 50 feet plus, basically, from the existing building, then you would be okay with that.
There's no building there yet.
No, there is a building on the north property line, north of the
1625.
proposed, yeah.
Well, yeah, the proposed, yes.
So, but how can you carve that out? Because the building, you might have like an encroachment of 0.2 feet. So how do you do that properly? And give it so that they don't have to come back for a variance?
He's going to have to get a new deed shown to, or a new survey shown to us and show this. When he submits for a permit for this garage, he's going to have to provide to us proof that he has deeded this area of land to the other property, and the dimensions would have to be consistent with the variance that are being approved here. So in other words, that new property boundary would have to be, that rear property boundary of 1625 would be at 50 feet from the rear building. Yeah, that'd be the setback then.
All right. Okay. Any other questions of staff or comments? Well, then I will request a recommendation.
I make a motion to grant variance 5-2018 as requested by the applicant on the condition that the existing building of 1625 White Drive maintain a 50-foot rear setback, and the deeded property pursuant to the applicant's request be expanded on the north and west boundaries to minimize the encroachment.
We understand and agree with that.
They concur. Thank
Well, I second that. That's a good one.
you. All right. Is there any discussion on all that?
No
No
discussion.
discussion, okay. May we have roll call, please?
Member Johnson?
Yes,
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahayab?
Yes.
Sorry.
Very well. You got the 4 votes. That's what counts. Congratulations. All right. Let's moving on. Let's go back to page one.
You guys are good to go.
Well, come on.
Thank you.
We'll have discussion. You can have discussion. You can come and talk with us if you want to. Okay, thank you. At this time, we ask if there are any petitions or requests from the public present. Our public ran away. Okay, reports. We have a semi-annual report to go over or talk about? It was submitted, is that correct?
Yeah, you have a draft report. If you accept it, we'll forward it over to City Council. You do this twice a year.
And that's on page what?
I'm sorry. Page
49.
49, last page of your agenda.
Okay, last page.
We didn't have that many.
No, what, was it two? Two. Okay. Well, in wrapping up here, I'd like to welcome our new full-time member of our board. So now for the public listening, we have a vacancy for a full-time with certain skill requirements, which have been repeated several times, and an alternate member that does not have a set skill. Public at large for an alternate member. So we could always need some extra help because we have a vacancy tonight. It'd been nice to have her fill in. Staff, anything to report tonight?
No, sir.
All right. Any updates of the council? Any of our members?
No, thank you.
All right. Then I will call this meeting adjourned.